Oh, honey, I think you might be a little lost. This is the line for first class. The words syrupy sweet and sharp as broken glass hung in the air. For the woman they were aimed at, it wasn't the first time she'd heard them, but today it would be the last. In the next 10 minutes, the woman who said those words, the airline she worked for, and the entire North American air travel network would learn a very, very expensive lesson. This isn't just a story about racism. It's a story about power. The kind of hidden power that runs the world and what happens when you accidentally poke the one person who holds the kill switch. The sterile recycled air of John F. Kennedy International Airport's Terminal 4 was a familiar purgatory for Dr. Annalise Carter. It was a place of transitions, a necessary gray space between a nine-figure deal closed in London and a board meeting in San Francisco. At 42, Annalise moved with an economy of motion that bespoke immense self-assurance. She wore a tailored Brunello Cucinelli suit the color of storm clouds, her hair pulled back in a sleek chignon. Her luggage was a single, elegant Rimowa carry-on. Her presence was quiet but absolute. She wasn't loud. She didn't have to be. She approached the priority boarding lane for Global Wings Air Flight 8115 to San Francisco. The line was short, a collection of men in suits who looked rumpled and weary, and a woman who was loudly complaining into her phone about her dog sitter. Annalise took her place, pulling up her digital boarding pass on her phone, a simple QR code for seat 1A. The gate agent, a woman whose name tag read Brenda, watched her approach. Brenda was a woman who peaked in high school and had spent the subsequent 2 decades marinating in the bitterness of that realization. She wielded her minor authority at gate C26 like a feudal lord ruling a dusty, forgotten fiefdom. Her hair was a brassy blonde helmet, and her makeup was applied with the subtlety of a house painter. As Annalise reached the front, Brenda held up a hand, a gesture that was both dismissive and patronizing. It was then she delivered the line, her voice dripping with faux concern. "Oh, honey, I think you might be a little lost. This is the line for first class." Annalise paused. She didn't sigh. She didn't roll her eyes. She simply met Brenda's gaze. "I'm aware. I'm in seat 1A. Brenda let out a small disbelieving laugh, a sound like a small engine failing to turn over. "Right. Okay. Can I see your boarding pass?" she asked, her tone suggesting she was humoring a child. Annalise presented her phone. Brenda took it, her manicured nails tapping impatiently on the screen. She squinted. "This could be anything. A screenshot. I'll need to see your ID and the original booking confirmation." Annalise's jaw tightened imperceptibly. This was a deviation from standard procedure, and they both knew it. The man in front of her, who looked like he'd slept in his suit, had boarded with a grunt and a flash of his phone. No ID check. No cross-reference. "Of course," Annalise said, her voice a placid lake. She retrieved her driver's license from her wallet and handed it over. Brenda examined the license, then the phone, then Annalise. She was searching for a discrepancy, a crack in the facade. "Dr. Annalise Carter," she read aloud, drawing out the syllables. She looked up. "A doctor? Huh, that's nice." The implication was clear, not the kind of doctor who flies first class. Annalise didn't take the bait. "Is there a problem with my ticket, Brenda?" The use of her name seemed to needle the gate agent. "I'm just being thorough. We've had issues with fraudulent upgrades." She typed something into her computer, her fingers hitting the keys with unnecessary force. A frown creased her brow. This is interesting." "And what's interesting?" Annalise asked, her patience, a finite resource, beginning to dwindle. "Well, it seems there was a last-minute seat reassignment. Seat 1A has been allocated to one of our Platinum Elite members. There must have been a system glitch." Brenda offered a smile that didn't reach her eyes. It was a victor's smile. "We can get you a seat in Economy Plus. It's quite comfortable." Annalise knew with the cold certainty of a mathematician solving an equation that there was no Platinum Elite member and no system glitch. There was only Brenda and her small, ugly prejudice. She had been profiled, judged, and dismissed. Her seat, her legitimate, paid-for, top-tier seat, had been given away out of sheer spite. "I can assure you there is no glitch," Annalise said, her voice dropping a register. "I am the CEO of the company that designed and manages the booking and logistics software your entire airline alliance runs on. I can see the back-end data in real time on my phone. Seat 1A is and has been allocated to me since the moment of booking 2 months ago. There is no other passenger assigned to it. Brenda's smug expression faltered for a fraction of a second, replaced by a flicker of confusion, then it hardened again. The lie had been called out, and now she had to double down. Ma'am, I don't know what kind of fantasy you're living in, but this terminal is for planes, not fairy tales. The system in front of me says the seat is taken. Now are you going to take the economy plus seat, or are you going to hold up the line for our actual first-class passengers? Behind her, a man in a wrinkled suit muttered, "For God's sake, just get on the plane." Annalise looked at the man, then back at Brenda. She saw the smug satisfaction on the agent's face. Brenda believed she had won. She had put this woman, this black woman, who had the audacity to exist in a space Brenda felt she didn't belong, firmly in her place. Annalise gave a single slow nod. A profound calm settled over her. "No," she said, her voice soft but carrying the weight of a death sentence. "I won't be taking the economy seat." She stepped away from the podium, ignoring Brenda's triumphant, "Fine, have it your way." Next, Annalise walked a few feet away to the large window overlooking the tarmac. The Global Wings Air Boeing 737 sat gleaming under the afternoon sun, a marvel of engineering being prepped for its cross-country journey. She pulled out her phone. She didn't look for customer service numbers or airline complaint forms. She navigated to her contacts and pressed a single name, David Chen. Her chief operations officer picked up on the first ring. "Annalise, everything all right? Weren't you supposed to be boarding?" Annalise watched as the baggage carts buzzed around the aircraft. "David," she said, her voice devoid of all emotion. "Initiate Protocol Omega. Authorization Carter Alpha 7. Effective immediately. Epicenter is my current location, JFK Terminal 4, Gate C26. Target is the Global Wings Alliance Network." There was a half-second of stunned silence on the other end of the line. David, a man who had seen her navigate corporate takeovers and market crashes without flinching, knew the gravity of those words. "Annalise, are you certain Protocol Omega is—" "That's the nuclear option. The consequences are—" "I am aware of the consequences, David," she interrupted, her eyes locked on the plane that was meant to be hers. "There has been a critical operational integrity failure. Execute." "Yes, CEO," David said, his voice now crisp and professional. The line went dead. Annalise slid her phone back into her pocket. She stood by the window, a silent, solitary figure. For the first minute, nothing happened. Brenda continued to board passengers, a queen on her tin throne. The sun continued to shine. The world continued to turn. Then 5 minutes later, all hell broke loose. EtherLink Solutions was not a name the average person knew, and that was by design. It operated in the stratosphere of global commerce, a silent giant whose nervous system was woven into the fabric of modern logistics. They didn't make planes or fly them. They made them work. Their proprietary software suite, Odyssey, wasn't just a booking system. It was a comprehensive risk management, logistical coordination, and operational security platform used by the Global Wings Alliance, a conglomerate of 16 international airlines. Odyssey managed everything from crew scheduling and weight and balance calculations to real-time threat assessment and maintenance flagging. It was the digital brain of the entire alliance, processing billions of data points a second to ensure that thousands of flights carrying millions of people ran safely and efficiently. And buried deep within its code, known only to Annalise Carter, David Chen, and 2 other senior executives, was Protocol Omega. It wasn't designed for disgruntled customers. It was a doomsday switch, a fail-safe of last resort, created in the paranoid aftermath of 9/11 and refined after a series of sophisticated cyber attacks on infrastructure targets. Protocol Omega was to be triggered only in the event of a catastrophic system-wide security breach, a hostile takeover of the network, a compromised airport, a threat so severe that the only safe response was to stop everything. Instantly. When David Chen, sitting in a sterile server-side command center in Palo Alto, received the authorization code Carter Alpha 7, he didn't question it again. He entered the command. The effect was not like flipping a switch, but like severing a spinal cord. At JFK's gate C26, the first sign of trouble was the screen above Brenda's head. It flickered from blue to a blood red, displaying a single line of text, "System-wide integrity alert. Flight operations suspended. Standby. Code Omega." Brenda stared at it, annoyed. Stupid it, she muttered, trying to refresh her own terminal. It was frozen on the same red screen. A phone rang, then another. Then all of them a cacophony of panicked chimes up and down the terminal. The massive flight information board that dominated the center of the concourse went blank for 3 seconds, then lit up red every single flight under the Global Wings Alliance banner, 152 of them scheduled to depart from North American airports in the next 3 hours, now showed one word: grounded. Panic is a virus. It started as a murmur. What's going on? Is my flight canceled? The murmur grew into a roar. Airport staff, from supervisors to baggage handlers, stared at their tablets and terminals, all showing the same red screen of death. They were locked out. The brain had ceased communication with the limbs. On the tarmac, a fuel truck driver for Flight 815 got an alert on his console. Refueling halted. Await instructions. The pushback tug driver received the same. All ground operations for every Global Wings Alliance plane ceased. A pilot on a runway in Chicago, seconds from takeoff, found his controls flashing an override command from the system: takeoff aborted, return to gate, do not proceed. He had no choice but to comply. In the Global Wings Air North American Operations Center in Dallas, a room the size of a football field filled with hundreds of dispatchers and coordinators, every screen went red simultaneously. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. It was their worst nightmare. They were blind. They couldn't reroute planes. They couldn't communicate with crews through the system. They couldn't clear flights for departure. They had lost control of their own fleet. The financial tickers that ran on a constant loop in the corner of the room began to tell the next chapter of the story. The stock price of Global Wings Air's parent company, GWA Holdings, which had been stable all day, suddenly took a nosedive. High-frequency trading algorithms designed to react to news and network disruptions detected the grounding instantly. They interpreted it as a possible terror event or a massive, unprecedented system failure. The bots began to sell, and sell, and sell. Within minutes, the stock had plunged 12%. The market capitalization of GWA Holdings had shed $2.1 billion on paper value, yes, but it was a catastrophic loss of confidence that would have real-world consequences for years. Back at JFK, a portly man in a slightly too tight supervisor's uniform, his name tag reading Robert Maxwell, came rushing toward gate C-26, sweat beading on his forehead. "What the hell happened here?" He barked at no one in particular. His eyes fell on Brenda, who was looking pale and confused. "Brenda, what did you do?" "Nothing," she squeaked her earlier, bravado completely gone. "The system it just died. It's red everywhere." Robert was getting frantic calls from Dallas. "They're saying the alert originated from this terminal. This Gate A critical integrity failure. What does that even mean? Did someone try to hack the terminal?" He scanned the area, his eyes landing on the one person who wasn't panicking. The one person who was standing perfectly still, watching the chaos unfold with a detached, almost serene expression. Dr. Annalise Carter was still by the window watching the now motionless Boeing 777. She looked like the calm at the center of a hurricane she had summoned herself. Robert Maxwell, a 25-year veteran of the airline industry, felt a cold dread creep up his spine. He was a problem solver, and his instincts screamed at him that this woman was not part of the problem. She was the cause. He walked over to her, his approach hesitant. "Ma'am?" Annalise turned her head slowly to look at him. "Yes. I'm Robert Maxwell, the shift supervisor. I notice you're standing here. Did you see anything? Anything unusual happen right before the system went down?" "Oh, I saw something quite unusual," Annalise said, her voice smooth as silk. "I saw a gate agent for a multi-billion-dollar airline corporation make a decision based on prejudice rather than protocol. I saw her falsify a seat reassignment to deny a paying first-class passenger her seat. I saw her attempt to bully that passenger into accepting a lesser accommodation." "Huh?" Robert stared at her, the pieces clicking into place with horrifying speed. He glanced back at Brenda, who now looked like she was about to be physically ill. "The passenger? That was you," Robert whispered. "I am the passenger," Annalise confirmed. "Seat 1A on Flight 8115. And the system crash, the grounding," his voice trailed off. It seemed insane, impossible. Annalise gave him a small cold smile. That wasn't a crash. That was a controlled shutdown. My company, EtherLink Solutions, provides your operational software. Your gate agent's actions constituted a deliberate breach of operational integrity at a secure checkpoint. She overrode a legitimate ticket holder's credentials without authorization. In our system, that's functionally indistinguishable from an insider threat attempting to manipulate a passenger manifest. It's a red flag event of the highest order. So the system did what it was designed to do. It protected itself. It grounded the fleet until the threat could be assessed and neutralized. Robert felt the blood drain from his face. This wasn't an IT glitch. It was a contractual clause executed with ruthless precision. He looked from the calm, powerful woman in the designer suit to his trembling, terrified gate agent. Brenda had not just been rude to a customer. She had, in the cold, unfeeling eyes of a multi-billion-dollar software system, committed an act of corporate sabotage. Who are you? Robert finally stammered. Annalise extended a hand. Dr. Annalise Carter, founder and CEO of EtherLink Solutions, and the person whose authorization is required to bring your airline back online. The full weight of Annalise's statement settled over Robert Maxwell like a physical shroud. He wasn't just dealing with an angry VIP. He was speaking to the woman who held the launch codes, the $2. 1 billion figure now flashing on the news screens in the terminal bar wasn't an abstract number. It was a direct consequence of a conversation that had happened at this very gate. He looked back at Brenda. Her face had cycled through confusion and fear, and had now landed on a ghastly, pale disbelief. She was a deer caught not just in headlights, but in the blinding glare of an oncoming freight train. Her world, built on the petty tyrannies of her position, was crumbling to dust in real time. Brenda! Robert's voice was low and shaky, a mixture of fury and terror. Come here, now! Brenda shuffled forward, her eyes wide, fixed on Annalise. She looked like she wanted to speak, to apologize, to rewind time, but her throat had seized up. Did you? Robert began, his voice barely a whisper. Did you deny this woman her confirmed first-class seat? There was a platinum elite? The system, Brenda stammered the lie dying on her lips. It sounded pathetic even to her own ears. Don't you dare lie to me now. Robert hissed, his professional composure shredded. The entire North American fleet is grounded because of you. Dallas is screaming about a security breach. The FAA is probably scrambling jets. Did you lie about the seat? Brenda's eyes darted between her furious boss and the implacable CEO. The last vestiges of her defiance collapsed. A single tear traced a path through her thick foundation. Yes, she whispered, the confession hanging in the air like poison. Robert squeezed his eyes shut for a moment, as if the physical act could block out the sheer magnitude of the catastrophe. He opened them and looked at Annalise. His tone shifted from furious to desperately pleading. Dr. Carter, on behalf of Global Wings Air, I don't even know what to say. This is an unforgivable, catastrophic failure in our service and our standards. Please tell me what we need to do to fix this. Annalise's gaze was unwavering. First, she said, her voice clear and precise, you will publicly and personally escort me onto that aircraft. You will confirm that seat 1A is and always has been my seat. Second, you will issue a formal written apology from the airline to me before we take off. Third, she paused, her eyes shifting to Brenda, who flinched as if struck. You will address the operational integrity failure, permanently. Robert understood immediately. There was no ambiguity in her words. He turned to Brenda. Brenda, you are terminated, effective immediately. Your security credentials are revoked. Please hand over your badge and airport ID. An escort will see you out of the building. Brenda let out a small, strangled gasp. Robert, please. It was a mistake. I've been here for 15 years. And in 15 minutes, you've managed to cost this company billions of dollars and create an international incident. Robert roared, his desperation boiling over into rage. You are the most expensive employee in the history of aviation. Now give me your badge. With trembling hands, Brenda unclipped her ID from her blouse. The plastic card that had given her a sense of identity and power was now just a worthless object. She handed it to Robert, her eyes pleading. He took it without a glance. The public humiliation was absolute. Passengers who had been grumbling in line were now watching the drama unfold with rapt attention. They had seen Brenda's smug dismissal of Annalise, and now they were witnessing her spectacular downfall. There was no sympathy in their eyes, only a sort of detached schadenfreude-fueled fascination. "Dr. Carter," Robert said, turning back to Annalise, his voice thick with humility. "Is there anything else?" Annalise looked past him toward the gate. "The flight is now significantly delayed. I have a board meeting to attend. I suggest you get your house in order, Mr. Maxwell, so I can get on my way." "Of course, right away." "Enfin." Robert practically scrambled into action. He got on his personal phone, bypassing the dead company network, and called a senior executive in Dallas, a name he saved for true emergencies. "Richard, it's Bob Maxwell at JFK. I've found the source of the Omega alert." "No, it's not a hack. It's the CEO of Etherlink, Dr. Annalise Carter." "Yes, their CEO. She's right here. It seems one of our gate agents." "Yes, a gate agent. Denied her boarding for her first-class seat." "No, I am not joking. I wish I were." She invoked the protocol. "The condition for restoring the system is that the employee be terminated and she be allowed to board. The employee has been terminated. Please advise." The silence on Robert's end of the call was profound. He paled even further. "Yes, I understand. Yes, I will tell her." He hung up and faced Annalise. "Dr. Carter, Mr. Richard Davies, our Executive Vice President of North American Operations, extends his most profound apologies. He is boarding a company jet from Dallas as we speak. He wants to apologize to you in person when you land in San Francisco. He also wants you to know that Global Wings Air will be making a 7-figure donation to a charity of your choice as a more tangible apology for the insult you were shown today." This was capitulation on a corporate scale. They weren't just apologizing, they were groveling. Annalise simply nodded. "That will be acceptable. And the system, Dr. Carter, please. We need the system back." Annalise took out her phone again and made a second call to David Chen. It was even shorter than the first. "David, the threat has been neutralized. Rescind Protocol Omega. Authorization Carter, Beta 9. She hung up. 30 seconds later, the screens in the terminal flickered from red back to blue. The flight information board repopulated, now showing massive delays across the board, but it was active. A collective cheer and sigh of relief went through the terminal. In Dallas, hundreds of operators felt the system surge back to life. On the stock market, the GWA Holdings ticker stopped its free fall and began to slowly, painfully tick back upwards. The storm had passed. Robert Maxwell, looking 10 years older than he had an hour ago, personally walked Annalise down the jet bridge. He gestured to Seat 1A, a plush leather throne at the front of the cabin. "Your seat, Dr. Carter. Again, I am so sorry." Annalise took her seat, placed her Rimowa carry-on in the overhead bin, and sat down. She didn't look back. As the cabin door was sealed, she was the picture of victory. She had faced down petty racism and wielded her immense power to exact a swift and devastating punishment. She had won, or so it seemed. The flight to San Francisco was for Annalise an oasis of calm after the storm she had unleashed. The flight attendants, undoubtedly briefed on the monumental fiasco that had just occurred, treated her with a reverence usually reserved for visiting royalty. Her champagne glass was never empty. The captain himself came out of the cockpit to apologize personally. On the ground, Richard Davies, the executive VP, met her at the gate as promised, his face a mask of corporate contrition. He reiterated the apologies, confirmed the charitable donation, and handed her a card with his personal cell number, imploring her to call if she ever needed anything ever again. Annalise accepted it all with a cool, detached grace. She had been wronged, and the wrong had been righted in the most dramatic fashion possible. Brenda was gone. The airline was humbled. A message had been sent. As she rode in the black car from SFO to her penthouse apartment overlooking the bay, she felt a grim sense of satisfaction. It was the feeling of a battle hard fought and decisively won. But battles, she would soon be reminded, are rarely the entire war. The first tremor came the next morning. It wasn't on the news, which was still running breathless stories about the unprecedented system glitch that had grounded Global Wings Air. It was an email from Arthur Vance, the chairman of the board of Etherlink Solutions. The subject line was a single word: urgent. The body was just as terse: my office. 9 a.m. tomorrow. The entire board will be present. Arthur Vance was a titan of Silicon Valley, a man who had been a mentor to Annalise in her early days. He was sharp, pragmatic, and possessed a legendary aversion to drama. An email like that from him was the corporate equivalent of a nuclear alert. Annalise walked into the Etherlink boardroom the next morning. The 30-foot-long table of polished obsidian was surrounded by the 7 other board members. The mood was not celebratory. It was glacial. Arthur Vance sat at the head of the table, his face carved from granite. Annalise, he began, foregoing any pleasantries. Please explain to us the justification for invoking Protocol Omega yesterday. Annalise recounted the events at JFK, laying them out with the same precision she had used with Robert Maxwell. She described Brenda's condescension, the lie about the seat, the blatant racism. It was a clear case of an insider deliberately manipulating the system at a secure checkpoint to deny a credentialed individual access. It fit the security parameters of an insider threat. A board member, a former general named Peterson, scoffed. Don't insult our intelligence, Annalise. It fit the parameters because you wrote the parameters. You used a weapon of mass disruption designed to protect this company and its clients from terrorism and cyber warfare to win a personal argument with a gate agent. It was more than an argument, Annalise countered, her voice firm. It was a fundamental breach of the principles of operational integrity we sell to our clients. And your response to this breach, Arthur Vance cut in, his voice dangerously low, was to inflict a $2 billion loss on our largest client, trigger a federal investigation, and expose this company to litigation that could bankrupt us. He gestured to a stack of files on the table. This arrived by courier an hour ago. It's a notice of intent to sue from Global Wings Alliance, not just for the financial losses, but for gross negligence and reckless endangerment. They claim you used a safety protocol maliciously. Their lawyers are arguing that by grounding 152 flights without a verifiable life-threatening security risk, you actually created a more dangerous situation. Planes stuck on tarmacs, emergency services, misdirected, thousands of passengers stranded. Annalise felt a chill seep into her bones. They apologized. Their EVP met me at the gate. Xianom, that was the airline's operational division trying to put out the fire. Arthur said, his voice laced with contempt. This is from their parent company's legal department. They are not apologizing. They are coming for blood. And frankly, Annalise, they have a point. Another board member, a shrewd venture capitalist named Maria Flores, spoke up. We've spent a decade building Etherlink's reputation on one-word reliability. We are the calm in the storm. The adults in the room. In one afternoon, you've recast us as volatile and vindictive. You've turned our ultimate safety feature into your personal revenge button. How do we sell this to our other clients? The shipping conglomerates, the government contractors. Trust us with your multi-trillion-dollar logistics, but be aware our CEO might shut down your entire operation if one of your employees is rude to her. The room was silent. The grim satisfaction Annalise had felt was evaporating, replaced by a dawning, horrifying understanding. She had been looking at the chessboard from her own perspective, focused on checkmating Brenda and the airline. She had failed to see the rest of the board, the dozens of other games being played, and how her move had catastrophically upended all of them. I built this company, Annalise said, her voice strained. I built it from nothing. And we backed you, Arthur Vance replied, his voice softening slightly, but losing none of its steel. We believe in you, but the CEO is a steward of the company. Your first duty is to the health and stability of the enterprise and its shareholders. Yesterday, you put your personal pride above that duty. You weaponized Etherlink for a personal vendetta. No matter how justified you felt, the consequences are untenable. He let the words hang in the air. The board has had a discussion, he continued. We believe this situation requires a change in leadership to restore confidence with our clients in the market. We are asking for your resignation as Chief Executive Officer, effective immediately. The words hit her like a physical blow. Resignation from her own company, the company that was her life's work, her creation, her soul. You can't be serious, she whispered. We are deadly serious, Annalise. Arthur said, his eyes filled with a weary sadness. You can fight this, of course. It will get ugly. The press will have a field day. Racist gate agent versus tyrant CEO. Nobody wins that story. Or you can resign, retain your seat on the board and your considerable stock holdings, and we can frame this as you stepping back to focus on new ventures. We can salvage something of your legacy, and more importantly, we can save the company. She looked around the table, at General Peterson's stern disapproval, at Maria Flores's calculated disappointment, at Arthur Vance's grim resolve. She saw no allies. She had overplayed her hand so spectacularly that she had lost the very people who had once been her greatest champions. The power she had wielded so decisively at JFK had been absolute but fleeting. The power in this room, the collective institutional power of a board of directors, was of a different kind. It was slower, quieter, but ultimately more enduring, and it had just crushed her. Annalise Carter did not fight. She was a strategist, and she knew when a position was indefensible. The next day, Etherlink Solutions issued a press release. It announced with profound regret that its visionary founder, Dr. Annalise Carter, would be stepping down as CEO to pursue new challenges and philanthropic interests. She would remain a board member and a significant shareholder. David Chen was named interim CEO. The business world read between the lines. The unprecedented glitch was recontextualized. Global Wings Air quietly dropped its lawsuit in exchange for a massive multi-year discount on Etherlink services, a settlement that would cost shareholders hundreds of millions of dollars over the next decade. The FAA investigation concluded that the incident was caused by a misapplication of a proprietary security protocol and levied a hefty fine against Etherlink, further denting its reputation. Annalise became a ghost in the machine she had built. She attended board meetings via video conference, a silent face on a screen watching, as David, her loyal subordinate, expertly navigated the company through the crisis she had created. He was good. He was steady. He was exactly what the company needed. She was rich, fantastically rich. Her stock holdings still made her one of the wealthiest women in technology. She had her penthouse, her freedom, her time. But she had lost her purpose. Her name, once a symbol of Black excellence and groundbreaking innovation, was now a cautionary tale whispered in boardrooms. A story of hubris. A story of power used unwisely. Months later, driven by a strange sense of morbid curiosity, she hired a private investigator to find out what had happened to Brenda. The report was short and bleak. Brenda had become unemployable in the airline industry. Her name was informally blacklisted. The public nature of her firing at JFK, witnessed by dozens of people who had then shared the story, made her toxic. After losing her job, the financial strain led to her car being repossessed. Unable to make rent on her modest apartment near the airport, she was evicted. The investigator's last known address for her was a low-rent motel in Queens, paid for week to week. She had been fired for racism, but her punishment, fueled by the sheer scale of the incident, had cascaded into total destitution. There was no victory in reading it. It was just a sad, pathetic end to a sad, pathetic life. One moment of ugly prejudice had cost her everything. One afternoon, sitting in her vast, sterile apartment, Annalise looked out over the San Francisco Bay. The satisfaction she had felt on that plane was a distant, hollow memory. She had been right in principle. Brenda's actions were wrong, a symptom of a casual bigotry that people like Annalise had to navigate their entire lives. But her reaction, her decision to use a sledgehammer to crack a nut, had created a crater that had swallowed not just Brenda, but a significant part of her own life's work. She had proven she had power, but in the real world, unlike in stories, exercising absolute power always comes with an absolute cost. She had frozen 152 flights and wiped out $2.1 billion in market value to win a battle over a seat, and in doing so, she had lost her own throne. The gatekeeper was gone, but the queen was in exile. In the end, the empty silence of her victory was its own profound kind of defeat. A year is both an eternity and the blink of an eye. For Annalise Carter, it had been a year of gilded emptiness. Her penthouse apartment, once a sanctuary from the relentless pace of her life as a CEO, had become a beautifully furnished prison. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of a vibrant, bustling world she no longer felt a part of. She had a new routine, one composed of silence and shadows. She managed her vast portfolio with a detached efficiency, read voraciously, and took long, solitary walks along the Embarcadero, anonymous in a city that once celebrated her as a titan. The philanthropic work she had imagined filling her days felt hollow. She wrote checks, large ones, to STEM programs for underprivileged girls and to various tech incubators. But the committees and charities didn't want her insight or her vision. They wanted her money and a brief, sanitized mention of her name in their brochures. They certainly didn't want the controversial figurehead of the infamous Omega incident chairing their galas. She was a liability, a name associated with instability. The money was clean, but the source was considered volatile. The company she had birthed, Etherlink Solutions, continued its steady trajectory under David Chen. She would watch him on financial news networks, speaking calmly about stability, security, and trust. He was brilliant at it. He was steering the ship through the choppy waters. She had created his hand firm on the tiller. But she also saw the subtle shift. Etherlink, once a disruptive innovator, was becoming a cautious incumbent. It acquired smaller, safer companies. It shied away from the kind of bold, paradigm-shifting projects that had been her lifeblood. It was surviving, even thriving in a conventional sense. But its soul, the wild, ambitious spark she had ignited, was being carefully extinguished in the name of corporate prudence. It was another loss, a quiet, private grief she couldn't articulate to anyone. Her legacy was being rewritten in tech journals and law schools. The Omega incident had created a new subfield of corporate law. She read a lengthy article in the Harvard Business Review about mitigating founder God syndrome and saw her own story, anonymized but unmistakable, used as the prime case study. Enterprise clients now demanded what was being called the Carter Clause in their software contracts, a clause explicitly preventing a single executive from having unilateral access to system-wide shutdown protocols. Her act of personal justice had shackled the very industry she had worked to revolutionize. She had wanted to teach one person a lesson, and in the end had given 1,000 CEOs a new reason to fear innovation. One Tuesday evening, seeking to escape the suffocating silence of her home, Annalise went to a quiet, old-world hotel bar downtown. It was a place of dark wood, soft leather, and hushed conversations, a relic from a time before tech took over the city. She ordered a Macallan 18 neat and sat in a secluded booth, hoping to simply be invisible. She was nursing her drink when a man approached her table. He was in his late 50s with kind eyes crinkled at the corners and the quiet, steady posture of someone accustomed to immense responsibility. He wore a simple blazer and slacks, but his presence filled the space. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm and respectful. "I know you probably value your privacy, but you're Dr. Annalise Carter, aren't you?" Annalise tensed. This was what she dreaded. A confrontation, a snide remark, a request for money. "I am," she replied, her tone guarded. "My name is Frank Miller. Captain Frank Miller," he said, offering a hand. She shook it hesitantly. It was a firm, dry handshake. "I was a pilot with Global Wings for 34 years, retired 6 months ago." Annalise's blood ran cold. A pilot. He was there. He was one of the people she had grounded. "Captain," she said, her voice a careful neutral. "Can I help you?" "I hope so," he said with a small, disarming smile. "Can I sit for a moment? I promise I'm not here to cause a scene." Curiosity warring with her instinct to flee, Annalise nodded toward the seat opposite her. Frank sat down, signaling the waiter for a club soda. "I wasn't flying that day," he began, as if sensing her immediate fear. "I was on a layover in Frankfurt, but my entire crew was. My first officer, a young man named Ben, was scheduled to fly his family to Hawaii the next day for his daughter's 5th birthday. He got stuck in Chicago for 2 days. Missed the whole thing." Annalise remained silent, her fingers wrapped tightly around her glass. "My best friend, another captain, was on the runway at LAX full of passengers, ready for an 11-hour flight to Tokyo." Frank continued, his tone conversational, not accusatory. "When your protocol hit, his systems flashed a red warning he'd only ever seen in a simulator. One that meant catastrophic failure. He told me later, for about 30 seconds, he genuinely thought they'd been hit by an EMP or a major cyber attack. He thought it was war. The panic in the cabin," he said. "It was something he'll never forget. An elderly woman had a panic attack. They had to get paramedics on board. It was chaos." Each word was a small, precise incision. She had thought of the event in abstract terms of flight systems market value. She had never truly pictured the faces in the seats, the terror in the cockpits, the missed birthdays, the human debris left in the wake of her digital tidal wave. "I'm not here to judge you, Dr. Carter," Frank said, leaning forward slightly. "Lord knows I've had my share of difficult gate agents, some real pieces of work, and I've heard the stories about what happened to you. What that woman did was inexcusable." He paused, taking a sip of his club soda. "But I'm a man of systems. A plane is a system. An airline is a system. You spend your whole career learning that you never ever act impulsively within the system. You follow the checklist. You de-escalate. You trust the process. Because one emotional decision at 35,000 feet can be the last decision anyone ever makes." "It wasn't an emotional decision," Annalise heard herself say, the old justification rising reflexively. From a data security standpoint, her actions registered as a malicious insider threat. The protocol acted accordingly. Frank listened patiently, then nodded. "I understand the logic. I read the reports. But the thing about systems, Dr. Carter, is that they're run by people. Flawed, messy, sometimes prejudiced people. That's the variable. The system has to be resilient enough to handle that variable without self-destructing." He looked her directly in the eye. "You built a system that wasn't. You built a perfect logical system that couldn't handle one imperfect person, so when it was challenged, it chose devastation over discretion." His words hit her harder than the entire board of directors had. They hadn't talked about logic and systems. They had talked about money and reputation. Frank was talking about her philosophy, the very core of her life's work. "That day," he said, his voice softening, 152 flight crews like mine, 1,000 of us. Our faith in the tools we use to keep people safe was shaken. Not by a terrorist, not by a mechanical failure, but by the person who designed them. We felt betrayed. Like the architect of our house had secretly built in a self-destruct button and then pressed it because she had an argument with the mailman. The analogy was brutal and perfect. Annalise felt the dam of her composure finally crack. A year of stoic denial crumbled under the weight of this pilot's gentle, devastating honesty. "I never," she started, her voice cracking slightly, "I never considered it from your perspective. From the cockpit. Few people do," he said without malice. "Everyone thinks about their seat, their baggage. Nobody thinks about the two people up front trying to keep the whole thing from falling out of the sky." He finished his drink and stood up. "Thank you for your time, Dr. Carter. I wanted to understand. I think I do now." He put a $20 bill on the table. "For your drink," he said. "Fly safe." And with that, he was gone, leaving Annalise alone in the booth, the silence now ringing with his words. The victory she had claimed, the justice she had exacted, felt like ashes in her mouth. She had punished a bigot, yes, but she had also terrified thousands, betrayed the trust of those who relied on her genius, and scarred her own legacy. The hard, cold truth was that she had behaved like a god, not a leader. She had seen a flaw in one human and decided to punish the entire system. Brenda's racism was a poison, but Annalise's response had been a plague. She left the bar and walked out into the cool San Francisco night. The city lights seemed different, softer. For the first time in a year, she wasn't thinking about what she had lost. She was thinking about what she had broken. When she got back to her apartment, she didn't pour another drink. She sat at her computer and pulled up the file on the charitable donation Global Wings Air had made in her name. The organization was called the Aegis Initiative. She had never bothered to look into it. She did now. Their mission was startlingly specific: to provide advanced de-escalation and conflict resolution training for high-stress public-facing professions, focusing on bridging the gap between established protocol and human fallibility. The irony was so thick, so profound, it was almost comical. She scrolled through their website, reading about their methods, their workshops, their philosophy. It was all about creating resilient human systems, not just technological ones. It was about teaching people how to handle the Brendas of the world without needing to press the big red button. A year ago, she had the power to stop the world. Now all she had was money and time. She found the Get Involved page. There was a button for donations, which she ignored. There was another for corporate partnerships. And then there was a small link at the bottom, volunteer opportunities. She clicked it. It wasn't a solution. It wasn't redemption, but it was a start. It was a step out of the sterile penthouse and back into the world of flawed, messy, unpredictable people. It was a quiet acknowledgement that the most important system she had failed to understand was the human one. So what's the real lesson here? It's easy to cheer for Annalise. We all want to see prejudice get its comeuppance in the most spectacular way possible. And for a moment, this story delivered that satisfaction on a silver platter. But life isn't a simple revenge fantasy. The hard karma in this story didn't just strike the racist gate agent. It hit the powerful CEO who let her personal anger override her professional judgment. This story is a stark reminder that in the complex, interconnected world we live in, every action has a cascade of consequences. Using disproportionate force, even for a just cause, can create blowback you never see coming. Annalise won the battle but lost her empire. Brenda started a fire with a single spark of bigotry and was consumed by the inferno. It's a tragedy of two people both brought down by their own worst impulses. If this story made you think, if it made you question the nature of power, justice, and revenge, then do me a favor. Hit that like button, share this video with someone who appreciates a story with real-world twists, and make sure you subscribe for more content that goes beyond the headlines. What would you have done in her shoes? Let me know in the comments below.